Welcome to Chinwag Tuesdays, your passport to a world of language and culture.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Chinwag Tuesdays. I'm Amanda, and today's special guest is Max, another Aussie. She's from Sydney, and she's been teaching English as a foreign language for over 10 years. Thank you so much for being here today, Max.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right, so introductions. How did you get started teaching? 10 years is a long time, so how do you keep passionate about teaching?
Yeah, I guess it's sort of been longer than 10 years because it has been, like I was saying to you before, like quite on and off. I did a bit of just standard tutoring in high school. And then I think when I went overseas, when I lived overseas for the first time, I started sometimes giving private lessons. And that was 18 years ago.
Wow.
17, 18, yeah. And yeah, that was in Germany and then a bit in France. And then I moved to Spain and I did a TEFL certificate. And that's where I started teaching classes. I did that for about a year and a half. I moved back to France. And then it was sort of just the odd private student here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at the time I was really focusing on foreign languages. I wanted to be an interpreter. It's a long story, but I later realized that wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
English teaching was the plan B. So it was something that was part-time, sort of in the background, and then it became like the full-time plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to the second part of the question, I guess staying passionate. I suppose you do feel like you're doing something kind of useful. I know I'm not saving lives or doing anything major, but it's nice to feel a little bit helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, even though I'm the teacher in most educational situations these days, I do feel like I am always learning as well, whether it's learning about new teaching methods or just learning more about English. Like, that word actually has several pronunciations, or that's the etymology of that word.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not to say I don't have dips. Yeah. Especially when it comes to making content, because I don't have a boss, which is nice in some ways, but it can also be tough because you don't have someone on your back. I mean, maybe you experience this as well. When you don't have hard deadlines, it can sometimes be hard to motivate yourself. And
Definitely.
So I have to admit that the motivation has come in ebbs and flows, I guess.
Yeah. No, I can completely understand that. Oh, the content side, it's a whole nother ball game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is very different. It's almost like two completely different jobs sometimes.
It is. I really think it is, yeah, because you kind of do have different audiences, but on one hand, I should say, like with your content creation, it's like you've got to try and engage your current audience, find ways to get a new audience, but then also try and convert that audience if you want to into like paid students or paid customers. And there's all that kind of process, I guess, depending on your goals of social media. But yeah it's tough trying to figure all that out. Yeah. Which leads into the next question. Something I didn't mention in the introduction is that you have a very successful YouTube channel. So what inspired you to start? And how do you decide what content to create?
Yeah, so I started back in 2015. It really wasn't very serious, I guess, in the beginning. At the time, I was actually doing an interpreting master's. I didn't finish that. I ended up dropping out because I realized, this is not my thing. While I was doing that, I had the idea of maybe starting an English YouTube channel because I still had, I think, one or two private students. And sometimes I would watch other teachers on YouTube and I thought, oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a fun thing that I could just do on the side. And then I actually got quite sick because I first had depression and then I caught a virus, which down the track led to chronic fatigue. But anyway, it's another story. But when I was doing the interpreting masters, I dropped out the first time because I was sick. And so I went home. And while I was there, I was home for 6 months and I actually recovered fairly fast, at least from the depression, and wanted something to do. So I thought, okay, this is a good time to start making those videos. It certainly wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. It was a lot more time consuming than I was expecting. And I remember the first time sitting in my room, just talking to a camera. I don't know if you experienced this, but in the beginning, it feels stranger than talking to somebody. People might think, but you're alone, like nobody's watching you, who cares? But it just feels really awkward at the beginning.
It does. It really does. Yeah, I agree. Do you ever watch back on your original videos?
Yeah, I see. I watch them sometimes. Yeah. Every now and then I
Yeah.
take them down because I'm just like, no, I can't leave that up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've
But
got
my very
like, oh, sorry. Yeah.
no, I was just gonna say my very first video is still on there. Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because I don't really use it anymore, but I had a YouTube channel about my life in India. So I had started that. I wasn't allowed to work here and I needed something to do. I was just bored out of my brains. It was pandemic time. So I started a YouTube channel. And it's not even that old. I started it back in 2022 or something, but I still cringe at that first video. I keep it up because that video answers why I moved to India. And I get so many questions on my teaching page now. Why did you move to India? So I'm like, watch this video. It answers everything. But sometimes I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's so cringe.
Do I want
But
people to see that?
yeah. But it does answer so many questions.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's been almost 10 years since you started. So how do you decide what content to create for? I think I read on your website or your page that you create content mostly for intermediate to advanced English learners. So yeah, how do you decide that?
I will first acknowledge that, especially on YouTube, you often have to look at what's popular, what's sort of trending, the algorithms, all that stuff. I mean, not that I fully understand the algorithms, but you need to, I guess, have a look at what might do well because you're going to put a lot of time into the video usually. And so, I mean, we do copy from each other. Even I think some people think that like the big YouTubers, they're like the trendsetters. Even they're copying from the smaller creators.
It happens, yeah.
Yeah, but that's not to say that, I mean, even if you might like use the same topic or you might use the same title, but I always try to put my own spin on it, use different examples, maybe use different vocabulary. Yeah, I find on like Instagram when you're making smaller videos, like I don't really need to do that so much. That's usually stuff, and even on YouTube sometimes it's just like, oh, I think that would be a good idea, or I think that might be fun or useful or something. So yeah, and sometimes there are just coincidences. Like one time somebody accused me of copying and I hadn't even seen the original, so to speak, video.
Yeah, I feel like in the English space, there's going to be overlaps, 100%.
Yeah, but with, I guess, smaller videos, I usually have a list on my phone or a written list of ideas. You probably have the same. And things that, like common mistakes that I've heard. So just observing students in real life because I am still teaching in real life.
Yeah.
And things maybe that I found difficult when I was learning languages. I might just hear some expression and think, oh yeah, that's a good expression. That's a bit interesting, a bit funny, something like that.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say there isn't a deep process or anything. It's just
what comes to mind.
What comes to mind pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big list writer, but my bad habit is that I'm not consistent with where I keep my lists. So I have a list on my phone, I have a list on the computer, I have a list in a notebook at my desk. So whatever's closest, I'm like, oh, I'll write that down.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same actually. I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, I'm similar. So I can relate.
Yeah. Like if I'm at my desk, I'll like open up my Google document. But then if I'm outside and I think of something, I'll write it in my phone. But then other times, like I've got my cute little whiteboard here. Sometimes I make content like reels with that. So I write things in the notebook because it's easier to have next to me when I'm writing on the whiteboard. Yeah. So no real process, just whatever pops up.
Yeah. Do you ever have the problem of just like having a really long list and not really knowing where to start? You're like, oh, I could do that. I could do that. And you start writing something like, oh no, but I think that's maybe better. And
yeah, no, it definitely happened. Same thing though, what you were saying, how you got accused of copying content. Not that I got accused, but like I'll get an idea and then I'll see another creator post something like that. I'm like, oh, shit, like I have it in my notes. I have it in my notes.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, but like even when you think about the Aussie English space, even that's even smaller. So there's only like so much that you can do before, it does start to overlap and it might look like that people are copying each other. And maybe there is kind of a sense of copying, but what you were saying before about putting your own spin or using different examples of vocabulary, I think is really important. And something that I learned a long time ago is that, and it wasn't to do with teaching, it was just something about personal development actually. You might try learning something, right? And you might try reading this book 10 times, but it just doesn't click. But then you might find an author who's talking about the same thing in a way that you understand, and that book will click with you. So I kind of think about that on the flip side, in that I'm not going to be able to interest everyone or attract everyone, but the
Yeah.
people who will find my content useful will find it useful. So
Mhm.
even if I put out content that's already out there, there's going to be people who might not have found that similar content before
Yeah.
useful or understanding, but they'll find my content useful and understanding, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So that's
Because
how I
like,
try and think about it.
yeah, because people often say there's no perfect teacher, because who's perfect for one person or really good for one person might not be really good for another person. And the way you explain it
Exactly.
or present it might just click for a certain individual.
Yeah, exactly right. So I think it's the same with content as well. So yeah, that's the way I try and think about it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what are some of the most common mistakes you do see in your students or English learners, and how can they improve?
Okay, so when it comes to mistakes, I guess you can look at two things. You can just look at linguistic mistakes, for example, translating literally. And I don't think we should get too, I don't know, like militant about it, because also sometimes
Mm.
you can translate literally. And I'm also not one of those teachers that says, "Oh, stop thinking in your native language. You must think in English." I think, yeah, it's one of those things that sounds nice, but it's a bit like telling a depressed person, "Don't be depressed."
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just gonna snap my fingers
Yeah.
and
If it
get
was that
out of
easy,
it.
I would have stopped yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it might be something to aim for, but I think it's just, I think over time it's probably just going to happen naturally. And there
Mhm.
are things that you can do to maybe speed that up. There are different exercises you can do, but I think over time it will just happen. And yeah, so I think it's useful to like compare your native language and think, okay, in this situation, we use this expression, but in English, it's this expression, and the words might be completely different.
Mm.
And another thing, I suppose, yeah, still some pronunciation errors, silent letters. Sometimes I get
Mm.
people at an intermediate level still saying answer instead of answer.
Okay. Yeah.
And something that, so if students have me for quite a while, they probably think I'm a bit obsessed with the schwa.
I love the schwa.
Yeah. And you'll
Uh-huh.
underline something on the board. What sound do you think this is?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people have never even come across the concept before. They might get to an intermediate level and still not have really, yeah, heard about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are linguistic errors. And then you can also look at approach to learning. And I
Mhm.
thought of two things. The first one, this might sound really boring, but not writing things down, because there are people who get to a very high level without taking notes, writing things down, or even using dictionaries very much. But in my
Mhm.
experience, they tend to be people who started learning at a pretty young age and had regular exposure over a long period of time. So, they're
Mhm.
probably in their teens or early 20s, and they started watching movies, playing video games, watching series, maybe even reading books. And yeah, if you have all that time, you probably will get better without the need for active study. But
Yeah.
if that's not the case and you're trying to get better faster, I think, yeah, for most people, okay, everybody learns differently. I'll put that
Yeah.
in. But yeah, I think just taking notes, writing down words. If you hear something you don't understand it, write it down, look it up later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a little thing that people can do to really improve faster.
Yeah.
Another thing, and this might sound a little bit controversial, but it's actually overconfidence sometimes. I know a lot of teachers and coaches focus on trying to have more confidence and being, less
Mhm.
scared to speak, make mistakes, etc. And that's great and useful in some situations. But I've worked in a few language schools in Australia, and the main complaint or request that management usually gets is, "Can I be promoted to the next level? Why won't this teacher promote me?"
Right. They're too
Oh, that
confident.
happens. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes it is just because they want to have a certain level on their certificate when they go back to their country. But sometimes
Yeah.
it's really because they think they're better than they are. And that's not really going to help them. And
Yeah.
just being pushed up a level isn't going to magically make you better. And occasionally I do get students who request to go down,
Okay.
and they'll say, "I feel like I still have gaps. I'm a little bit lost in this class. What do you think? Is it okay if I go down?" And I actually have a lot more respect for those students,
Yeah.
because it shows self-awareness, maturity, and yeah, I think that's all I was going to say on that.
Yeah. I didn't really think of it like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I've never had experience in language schools, but I can picture that happening with students who would want to, I guess, push forward up onto that next level.
Yeah.
And it would be hard, I think, to have that conversation with someone who thinks that they might be better than what they are in reality and say, look,
Yeah.
actually, you could improve in certain areas still in this
Yeah.
level. So that must be a really hard conversation to have with them.
Yeah. Thankfully, I haven't had, because of certain classes that I've taken, I haven't needed to have too many of those, but I often hear head teachers having those
Yeah.
conversations.
Oh.
And they have to do it all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Oh, that's tough.
I guess it's just to sort of round that off, it's just you need to find balance, and sometimes being a bit humble is a good thing.
Yeah, true. On the topic of the schwa sounds, there's something I didn't realize until I started focusing more on Australian English is that we tend to use it a lot more than other dialects. So I always say this to students, and I always forget about examples right at the beginning. But there's a lot of times where in a word, say in British English, they might use the I sound at the beginning of a word, but we tend to
Yeah.
use the We use schwa a lot in Australian English.
Yeah.
But then I say to my students, it doesn't mean what you're saying is wrong, but in case you hear it differently, we do tend to reduce to a schwa a lot more than other dialects. And I don't really know the history of how that started, or whether it's just because we are a little bit lazy. Well, we're known to be lazy with speech, but is that something that you've noticed as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And even I have a video on the ED ending, and I even mention it because Americans do it quite a lot as well. Not necessarily, like sometimes if you play the audio in dictionaries, you won't always hear it.
Yeah.
But if you listen to Americans, obviously because of movies and things, we do a lot. So when I teach the ED ending, I always say, this is what you will see in dictionaries, the id. But in reality, a lot of native speakers say id.
Very wanted, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there is, I forget, I think there is actually a linguistic term for it, the if becoming, but I've forgotten. Yeah, if I find that, because I bookmarked something on like some Wikipedia page.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same with S endings as well. So it can be is or is. Yeah. Like, for example, roses, it reduces to the schwa in that ending too. Yeah, I'd love to know the term. I'll have to look into that too. All right. So what tips would you give English learners looking to take their skills from intermediate to advanced? I know that getting from that intermediate level to advanced level is probably the hardest, than saying go from nothing to intermediate, because you have all that learning possible. So how to make that jump between intermediate to advanced?
Okay. Well, I think it depends. So what level you are in intermediate, because it's quite a big, what's the word? I can't think of words here. I mean, there's
spectrum.
Range spectrum. Yeah, thank you. So there's a big difference between someone who's low intermediate and high intermediate. If you're low intermediate, there's usually still a lot of grammar to learn, pronunciation rules, etc. I think it gets harder when you get to that sort of high intermediate level. You can probably do pretty much everything you need to do. It's just that you're not as comfortable as you are in your native language, and there's still that big gap. My main recommendation for people at that level is to read a lot and to focus on vocabulary, really, because by that stage you probably will have learnt most of the grammar. That's not to say you won't make mistakes, but you've learnt the most of the rules.
Yeah.
And also with grammar and pronunciation rules, there's a finite number of rules, really. Okay, with pronunciation, if you're looking at different dialects, okay, that can go on. But if you just like, okay, if you're learning a pretty standard dialect, then there's not a ton to learn. But with vocabulary, it's really never ending. And it can get difficult to get past that level where maybe a few thousand words, like those few thousand words that we use every day, because the so-called advanced words are words that we don't use all the time. So they're harder to learn because you're not getting that repetition. And like listening to things, watching things, I'm not saying it's not useful, but if you're really trying to improve your vocabulary, I think reading is more useful, because if you're listening to things, you often just miss words. Whereas if you're reading, you can look at it in detail, you can underline things, especially if you want to get to a C2 level. When I was in France, for example, and really trying to improve my French, I had a subscription to this news magazine. And some weeks I would literally read through and underline, like cover to cover, and underline every single word I didn't know, then look them up, write them down. I mean, I didn't do that every single week. Sometimes it was just half the magazine or several articles, but that really did, it really did work. Some people might not want to hear that because it sounds really boring and tedious. But it comes back to the issue of how much time do you have? If you've got 10, 15 years, you can spread that out and do it in a way that's maybe a bit more fun. But if you're like, okay, I'm C1, I need to get to C2 in a year. I don't think there are many other ways to get there.
It's making time, really. If you have a goal, you need to make time for it.
Yeah.
Because like I'm learning Hindi, I'm a B1 level-ish. I don't do enough listening practice. And so that's a big weakness of mine. So I need to start making time for that. I tell my students all the time, just 5 minutes a day, just 5 minutes a day. And I struggle to make 5 minutes a day. So I know exactly where I need to kind of commit that time. Me living here has helped, but my husband speaks English. So we're not forced to speak Hindi to each other. His parents don't speak English, so I have to speak Hindi to them, but I don't see them every day. So I need to try and find that way of immersing myself more. But I really like the idea of reading more and highlighting and underlining. And it's just a matter of making that time if it's a goal. So yes. Okay, so how do you help learners stay motivated when they reach that intermediate or advanced level where progress can sometimes feel slower?
So what I normally do is, I suppose I remind them that it's normal to feel like you're stagnating at a certain point. And the reality is a lot of people do stagnate, and there isn't necessarily anything wrong with it. I'm not going to judge somebody for that. I mean, I guess I only really judge people if they're whinging about it and not doing anything about it. But that people have different needs, they have different educational backgrounds, people have different aims. So some people are perfectly happy to get to an intermediate level and stay there. If you're really wanting to get beyond that, then I guess I remind people that it's normal for it to feel hard. You're not alone, and it will just require a bit more effort. I think it's also good to realize that, or to remember that just because it doesn't feel like you're making progress, that doesn't mean you're not making progress. And it's just, you might be learning a whole bunch of words or phrases that you're not using every day. But in a week, you might hear that on the news and like, oh yeah, I understood that. So I think it's also good to maybe not compare your progress day by day or week by week, but maybe over several months, to be like, okay, I sometimes feel like I'm not moving forward, but what was I like 6 months ago? How did I feel in conversations 6 months ago? How much did I understand back then? Also remember that it's normal to have off days or even off weeks. Sometimes we feel like we're going backwards, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that we are. You might be tired, or you have days when your brain's just not as alert as usual.
Yeah. That's so nice of you to say, because that's actually how I'm feeling with Hindi right now. I feel like I'm going backwards.
Oh, really?
It's so hard. Like I do my Hindi lessons once a week, but I am feeling a little bit demotivated. I was feeling like maybe I wasn't making as much progress, but I post reels in Hindi on my other Instagram, my Life in India one.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah.
I think it's a good way to, they say that's a good way to.
Yes, that's how I track my progress. That's okay. But that's exactly right. So I say to students, record yourself. You don't have to post it on the internet like I do, but it's a really good way of tracking your progress, because I had a look at the very first reel I posted on Instagram in Hindi, where I was barely knowing how to do an introduction, and now I'm very good at self-introductions. But the difference, I mean, it's a couple of years difference, but I could see that difference, and that was really motivating for me, because I'm like, okay, maybe I am a lot further ahead than what I realized.
Yeah. And is this the first time that you've studied a foreign language? I mean, apart from maybe like 1 or 2 years at school.
Yeah, it is. Well, funnily enough, so I grew up in a small beachside town about 6 hours away from Sydney North. And where I grew up, so
You're very close to me then.
Oh, where did you grow up?
Coffs Harbour.
Piss off. Sorry, that's where I'm from. I'm from
Oh,
Whoopi.
oh my God. Really? 'Cause somehow I thought you were from Brisbane because I was snooping on your
Oh,
Instagram or something like that.
yeah, my mum and brother live in Brisbane, but
Oh,
dad's
okay.
still in Whoopi.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, okay. Well, I learnt Punjabi at school.
Oh, okay. Because of, yeah, we'll Google it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I learned
Mhm.
Punjabi for a few years, and Punjabi and Hindi are like sister languages. So the numbers in Punjabi and Hindi are almost identical. How you introduce yourself in Punjabi and Hindi is almost identical. Saying thank
Okay.
you is like the same. So I live
Mhm.
in Punjab now.
Okay.
So the main differences between Punjabi and Hindi, there's a few differences, like where we would use an apostrophe, like for example, like Amanda's house, instead of an apostrophe S, they use in Hindi it's ka or ki, depending on the gender.
Okay.
Punjabis use da or di. Anyway, completely
Okay.
besides the point. But yes, anyway.
Yeah.
How
Mhm.
interesting. My goodness. Oh my gosh, I have no words.
Oh, it's funny.
Yeah. When did you move away?
I moved away first time in 2005.
Okay.
Yeah, that's giving an idea of my age. That's when I went to uni.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was 15 then. So yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so
Oh, that's funny.
interesting. Well, I tell people I'm from Coffs Harbour because no one has heard of Woolgoolga. So
Yeah.
I normally just say Coffs. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going back home next month for
Okay.
well, when I say home, it's mostly Brisbane because that's where mum and my brother are and most of my friends because I spent 6 years there. But I grew up in Whoopi. Dad's and my grandma are still in Whoopi. So I will be
Okay.
probably going back for a couple of weeks as well. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cool.
Nice.
Wow. So yes, back to
Yeah.
the question about what languages I learned in school. Well, I went to the Catholic primary school in Whoopi and we started off learning Indonesian. And I
Okay.
still remember how to say like sabja, which I don't even know what that means now, but it's still like ingrained in me. But then, yeah, we learnt Punjabi for a couple of years. And then in high school, I learnt French for 2 years.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have
continued.
any
I went
other
to BB.
exposure.
Yeah.
Oh, when you changed schools, were you doing French there as well?
Yeah. That's partly why I changed schools actually, because I guess they probably had the same system while you were there. We had electives in year 9 and 10 and no languages ran. I would have been even happy to switch languages and go to Japanese, but
yeah.
And I was really ticked off about that.
Yeah, so that must have changed by the time I started school because the way they did it is they separated basically half the year got French, the other half got Japanese for year 7 and 8. And then I know some of my friends who continued into advanced Japanese or whatever for years 9 and 10. And then they got to go to Japan and they did a Japan trip and all this kind of stuff, which was really cool.
Oh, okay, nice.
So that actually happened after you left.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I didn't really have any exposure. My mum was born in Sydney, but her parents are Italian. They immigrated from Italy during the immigration rush after World War II.
Yeah.
So we were going to start learning Italian, but then we moved to Whoopi.
Okay.
So I was about 7. Yeah. So we were actually going to learn Italian. So I never really got that opportunity. So this is my first time actually learning. That was a really long answer to get to this.
No, it's fine. I find these things really interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, this was really my first opportunity of learning a foreign language. Didn't really know how to start, where to start, all over the shop. But it is my goal to learn Italian next. So
okay.
That's been on the top of my let's say to-do list for 3 years now because I kept telling myself when I'm fluent in Hindi, not realizing that fluency is a very long journey. So I think that I'm going to try and attempt to do it side by side, but let's see.
Yeah. Okay.
What languages do you speak?
So my main language is French, German, and Spanish. So when I was studying, when I was doing interpreting, those were my languages. And I speak like a tiny bit of Indonesian, tiny bit of Italian, tiny bit of Portuguese.
Yeah, wow.
But I wouldn't say that.
Is that because you lived in those countries?
I lived in Indonesia when I was little, and my parents said I technically spoke it before I spoke English because it was the sort of typical expat lifestyle with servants and driver and stuff. And I spent a lot of time with the servants, and so I just learned it. I was just perfectly bilingual as a little kid.
Yeah.
But then I was 6 when we went back to Australia.
Okay.
And so it was gone in like 6 months.
Yeah. So maybe you can tell me what like subja means.
Yeah, it means, I mean, literally it means good just. But it means I'm fine, thanks. Yeah.
Good to know. Oh, how funny.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I tried to relearn Indonesian later. I went back for a couple of months when I was 19, and unfortunately, never came back. Some people were saying, oh, you just need to go back, and a few weeks of exposure, it'll all just magically reappear in your brain. No, it didn't. But I was already studying French and German, so I was into studying languages, and I managed to get to a sort of conversational level. So I have survival Indonesian. Yeah, it's really just survival level.
Yeah.
And then the other ones, Italian. I mean, I wouldn't say that I speak it. If I was stuck somewhere in Italy where no one spoke English and I didn't have a phone, I could make myself understood for basic things. And I understand quite a lot, that especially speaking French and Spanish, that helps. But yeah, that was really just for a couple of years, I was teaching myself, watching YouTube videos and stuff.
Yeah.
Similar with Portuguese. I have had a few private lessons in Portuguese, but that was also just a bit of private study.
Yeah. And which do you think was the hardest or has been the hardest to learn?
I guess, German. Yeah.
Yeah.
French pronunciation is harder, and it took a while to get my ear into it because, I mean, we have connected speech in English, but in French, it's just, I feel like it's another level. Maybe I don't know, like from an objective standpoint, I don't know, but that's my feeling. Yeah, so German pronunciation is a lot easier. I have a better accent in German than I do in French, but at least, I mean, when I say easier for a native English speaker, I think. But the grammar was difficult in the beginning. And then, well, once you learn all the rules, it's okay. Some people complain about German grammar. I really like grammar, so that was actually not too bad. But I found it hard to get to that really advanced level of vocab. Partly because they have so many prefixes and suffixes, and so it's kind of like phrasal verbs, I suppose. You can just add this little word and it'll completely change the meaning. And so they'll have a bunch of words that look to us, to a foreigner, really similar. But because that little part in the beginning is different, the meaning is completely different. Yeah. So I found getting to an advanced level in terms of vocabulary was quite hard.
Yeah. And do you still like dabble in those languages now? Like, how do you kind of keep up to date with your skills?
I don't have any plan or routine or anything. They're all getting really rusty. I still understand pretty much the same amount as I understood before, but sometimes if I go to speak, especially German and Spanish, basic words won't come to me. I don't know, this week while I was procrastinating, I watched a Spanish series on Netflix. I sometimes listen to French podcasts. I happened to watch a German YouTube video this week.
Yeah.
So I guess every now and then I'll try to read it. Yeah. But I'm not doing it systematically or anything.
Yeah.
I guess because nowadays there's less motivation because sorry.
I said I'm still in shock. My mind's still from before.
Oh, from like coughs and whoopee.
Crazy. Small world. Such a small world, actually. Such a small world. Who would have thought? Like, I've come across a lot of your YouTube videos. I use them actually like as pre-lesson activities for a couple of my lessons.
Oh, wow,
like
I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah, like some of your contraction ones, and Anyway, so when I was thinking, I want to get some guests on, and I need to find some more Aussies. And then I was like, because you don't really focus on Aussie English, right? You focus on general English. So I'm like thinking, is Max Australian? And I had to listen to a couple of your videos to, where is she from? And anyway, and I'd been thinking about it for a while. So then I saw that you started posting a bit again on Instagram, and I'm like, now is the time to ask.
I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Well, what has been the most rewarding part of connecting with English learners through your YouTube channel? Because that's your main platform, isn't it? That's your main social media.
Yeah. I guess yeah, there are a few things. Like I said in the beginning, it's nice to feel that you're doing something a little bit helpful, kind of useful. And yeah, most people are just really nice. Obviously, I do get some negative comments or just really weird comments. It's an occupational hazard when you're working online. But yeah, and I think sometimes we focus on the negative. They say it's an evolutionary thing. To keep yourself alive, you focus on the threats.
Yeah.
But the truth is that most comments are really nice, and it's also interesting to see the geography sort of, or where people are based. Because sometimes people say, "Oh, hi, I'm watching from the Dominican Republic," or "I'm watching from Azerbaijan." You're like, "Oh my God, wow!" It's just really broad, and I don't know. Maybe that sounds narcissistic or something to think, "Oh, I'm touching so many countries."
Not at all. It's great. It makes you realize just how big the world is.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And it's just interesting to think that you're being watched in these really diverse places.
Yeah, that would be really cool to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Cool. How about for
Well,
you? Like, you mainly focus on Instagram and your podcast? Are those your main?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I have the YouTube channel and I posted a couple of videos at the start. But yeah, my main focus, oh my gosh, it's so naive of me. When I was like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast every week and I'll try and do a YouTube video every 2 weeks. Didn't happen.
Yeah,
and I haven't posted an actual YouTube video outside of my podcast in probably maybe 8 or 9 months. But it's fine because yeah, my main platform is Instagram. So that's where I focus pretty much all of my energy onto that. So I think, yeah, it's very similar, not in the sense that where people are watching from, but I think the most rewarding part is knowing that I'm helping people. I've worked in customer service like my whole life. And I always say that teaching is a form of customer service because you're providing a service to a customer and you're helping them and you're helping them achieve something. And I think that's really rewarding that you're able to do that. So
yeah,
even if it is through my free content on Instagram. But what you were saying before about the negativity and the negative comments, it is hard because I repurpose my reels onto YouTube Shorts, onto TikTok. I don't, they automatically post on Facebook, but I never get any hate there. But, at one stage, I could be getting like negative comments on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok all at the same time. And it can be really disheartening. And you just like want to be like, just get rid of it. Just stop it all. But then you might see a really beautiful comment and then you're like, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I posted this reel. It's actually went viral on YouTube and Instagram. And it's one of Steve Irwin. I don't know if you've seen it on my pinned reels. And it's just a really quick interview of him being interviewed by Rove, where he's like, do you drink coffee? And he's like, nah. And he's just talking about how he doesn't drink coffee because he's already too hyperactive.
Okay.
Literally in my notifications, I had 2 comments, one after the other, where one person's like, oh, I love those 2. And then the next comment is like, bloody can't stand either of them. And that just shows you the contrast of comments and of people's opinions. So I try and remind myself of those comments sometimes, like where you're not, what we were saying before, you're not going to appeal to everyone and that's okay.
No.
But the one thing I just do not understand is why people they just think on the internet that they have full access to you and they can say whatever they want. When I guarantee they're not going to be saying that to your face. And I think that's what bothers me so much is that I would never write something like that. But not everyone has the same, I guess, mentality as I do. But I think that's what's most hurtful. But then having to just remind myself that that's a them problem. They're obviously triggered over something or other.
And I think something that I remind myself of as well is that they're probably often teenagers. Not all the time, but I mean, sometimes you can really see who the person is. They've got an open profile and it's 50-year-old who you think should know better. But sometimes they're very young, sometimes, and then you have absolutely no idea what's going on in these people's lives. They might be really, there's a good chance they're very unhappy. They say, I've heard that at least 1% of the population are psychopaths. And if you think, okay, what's the percentage of negative comments that I get? It's probably below 5% or maybe 2%. Okay. A lot of them, they're either really unhappy people, they're really young, or they're psychopaths.
That makes it a bit more okay.
So I don't know. Sometimes tell myself things like that, and it,
Yeah.
helps a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you know what though?
But,
Sometimes I get comments from like people older than my parents, and I get so embarrassed for them because I'm like,
yeah,
you should know better. And I
yeah,
actually said to my siblings once, I was like, I sent a screenshot of this comment I got from this like woman in her 70s because she said she was in her 70s, where she
okay.
was really nasty about something. And I sent it to my siblings and I was like, I swear to God, if my mom and dad ever said something like this, like I would be having some firm words with them, like
Yeah,
targeting a young person that could be their daughter or their daughter's
yeah,
age or something, or a niece or something. But yeah, they should know better. But oh my gosh, the audacity, the freedom they think they get behind a
yeah,
keyboard or a laptop, it's just crazy.
yeah. Actually, one of the reasons why I don't share that much about my personal life is because I don't want to deal with people's opinions. And it's not
Yeah.
that I actually care that much what people think,
Yeah.
but I don't want to have to deal with it because I'm not a robot. It's not going to change what I'm going to do in my life, but it's
Yeah.
still going
Have
to
to deal with it.
piss me off.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Oh, yeah,
yeah, I think over time you build up a bit of a shell.
you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the very first negative comments I got, I was like, oh my God. And then I was thinking about it for the rest of the day. And now usually it's like block or mute, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, mute, block, delete.
Um,
Those are like the best things. Something I was talking to my therapist about actually was
mhm,
how, and I mentioned this in another interview I did, is that I do take things very personally. I'm a very sensitive person regardless. So when people do
yeah.
say negative things, I do take it to heart. And
Mm,
I not only have Aussie English with Amanda, I've got my Life in India account, G'day Namaste, which
okay.
also has a YouTube channel and an Instagram. So like there could be times where I'm getting hateful comments on all of these platforms on both
Oh
accounts.
no. Oh, you poor
And
thing.
so so something that I was talking to my therapist about is like this realization that I had is that I can't control what people do, say, or write on the internet at
Yeah.
me, but I can control how they have access to me. So
Yeah.
the things I can control is I can block, I can delete their comments, I can mute them, I
Yeah.
can restrict them. For a while, I had like a reel go viral on my other account, and people like mistook something that I said in a really dirty way because I was eating this
Yeah.
Indian street food snack, which is like it's called golgappa in Punjab, and it's
Okay.
basically this like round pastry thing that has a
Hmm.
hole in the top, and you fill it up with this kind of flavored water and like
Okay.
potato, and you kind of meant to put the whole thing in your mouth.
Hmm.
So my husband was filming me at a wedding, and I said, "Do I put the whole thing in my mouth?"
Hmm.
Not even thinking where people's
Oh
minds
my
would
God.
lead.
Yeah, because people are just, yeah. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
what I had to do on that reel is I restricted keywords, mouth, hole in mouth, put in mouth, all of any the variation of those words. So I just
Yep.
don't even see those comments now. So
Yep.
having
Yep.
that, I guess, having that option available and having control over even seeing those kind of comments, oh, huge
Yep.
relief. So now I'm
Yeah.
just trying to find ways of controlling what I can control. And if there is someone who's an asshole or something, I just block them. Like, I don't care
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
engagement, just piss off kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's something that I don't really know what to call us because I don't like the word influencer and I guess
Yeah. Let's
content
say,
creators.
yeah, people
But
online.
people online, I think some people forget that just because somebody talks to you, sends you a message or a comment, you don't need to answer.
Yes, true. Yeah.
You are under absolutely no obligation to reply to them or to answer them, to acknowledge them. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I sort of
Yeah,
see it's
that's so
like it's
true.
my party or this is my house. I'm allowed. It's my right to decide who I let in.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think when I first started my Instagram and I was doing a lot of like research on building a public profile and having this kind of account, and I grew very quickly. Like I only started Instagram April last year. It's been a year and a half.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it grew
Yeah.
very quickly. And I forget where I was going with this. Oh, yeah, replying back. So I had read somewhere when you're building an account, engage with your audience, reply to messages, reply to comments. But it gets to a
Hmm.
point where that starts getting too much and people do
Yeah.
feel like they have all of this access to you.
Yeah.
So I
Hmm.
do, if I am getting overwhelmed with messages because I've replied back to them once, I just
Hmm.
restrict because at
Yeah.
least then it goes back into my message request and I can then choose. I have the choice, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Hmm.
taking control over that message thread. So yeah, it's just
Yeah.
finding ways of taking control.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's good that exists now because I'm pretty sure, unless I wasn't using it correctly, but back in, because I mainly started making Instagram videos in 2018, like late 2017, I think. And yeah, in the beginning, I'd reply to people, but then they'd expect me to always reply and things. And so I even had something on my profile saying no DM, just
Yeah.
like, so people knew, okay, if you send me a private message, I won't reply, or it's unlikely.
Yeah.
And because at the time, if you did reply to them, then their messages would always be in your
Yeah.
one inbox.
Yeah. The restriction is fairly new. It's only a couple of years old now, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't even know that existed until one of like my best friend here. She's a fitness influencer in my city. And I was telling her I was getting these like really like kind of uncomfortable comments from people. And she's like, if you don't want to block them because of engagement or whatever, just restrict them. And I'm like, what does restrict mean? And she's like, it means that you're kind of putting a restriction on them. So if they comment on your page, only you and they can see the comment. They don't know that they've been restricted. So you can approve their comment. If they try to message you, the message goes into your message request. So it's just kind of putting some basically restrictions on that person. You've been banned. You've been naughty.
Yeah, without blocking them completely. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And they have no idea if they've been restricted or not. So you can just choose whether you accept their comment on your page, because like you won't even get notified that they've commented, but you might be checking comments on your posts, and then there'll be a little thing saying restricted comment, and then you can view it, and then you can see what it says, and you can choose to approve or not. So they have given you a lot more kind of, not freedom, a lot more options to have control over, again, who has access to you and your home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty, so we will finish up here, Max, if that's okay. But how can people contact you? So what is your Instagram, your YouTube, and anything else that you might use?
So YouTube is just English with Max. Very easy. Instagram's the same. English with Max, no underscores, no dots, just English with Max.
Cool.
People want to email me. I mean, I can't guarantee I will reply, but it's max@englishwithmax.com.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'll put all of that information in the episode description anyway. But thank you so much for coming today. Still mind blown that we're from the same town. How crazy is that? Out of a population of 27 million, now it's 27 million, that we're from the same small regional area of New South Wales. Wild.
Yeah. Oh gosh. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's been a really nice chat.
Thank you.